Mark Burrick, and here at Bitter at Beach, we do and give everything that you could possibly use to get better at beach volleyball, whether you're a coach or a player or you're just a fan. We have podcasts, we have online courses, we have camps, clinics, classes, and a pretty cool YouTube channel where we get to host some awesome guests like we have today. So today we have our guest, Mike Campbell, who has been at the helm of Long Beach State University, a storied university, especially in terms of volleyball. He's been there for 8 years, and he is also coaching at the professional level, the AVP level. So we're going to have some really cool and unique insights about the differences between club, college, pro, and of course, elite performance. So, newly made father, big congrats to him, and husband and super coach, Mike Campbell. Welcome. What's going on, man?
Mark, thanks for having me, man. I got to give a big shout out to your team and yourself for getting me on the podcast and the show. I'm really excited to be here. I think there's just, beach volleyball has done so much for me. So I'm super excited to share some of what I've gone through and some of my, ideas around the sport. I'm looking forward to a great talk.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. It is going to be a great talk. We already talked off camera, and congratulations. Your son is now just over a month old. Is that right?
5 weeks. I hate to correct you already, but I'm a father of two. So I've been through this already once
My
with a
bad.
2.5-year-old right now. And yeah, 5 weeks. And let me tell you to all those parents out there, man, I don't know how you guys do it, but two kids is something else. So my wife and I are sorting our way through it.
You probably attend more volleyball tournaments than our average listener, and they attend a lot. And you've got two kids, young. Do you have any one piece of advice for parents who are running off and trying to balance their volleyball life and passion with being great parents?
Oh man, this you're opening a can of worms. I think the two things I would say is is make sure your partner knows what they're getting into when you marry. I married an absolutely supportive woman who understood what the life of a coach looks like. Like you said, traveling almost every weekend, either with an AVP team or my beach team or a club team or just something volleyball is going on every weekend, which is also cool because it's beach volleyball and I can bring my family to it, and that's been fun. But you don't get to celebrate certain things like Easter. I don't think I've celebrated Easter the last 8 years, just because we've always had volleyball. We've always had Long Beach State beach volleyball in season. And then the second thing is just routines. Routines as a I'm sure as an athlete are huge, and routines as a coach are really really big. And try your best to respect the routine, because when you start changing things on the fly, you're harming somebody in your life, whether it be a family, a friend, a partner. Not harming in the physical way, but you're taking your time away from them when they were counting on you. So those two things have been absolutely huge for me to balance it all and to be respectful of those in my life. And so that way I'm fully present when I'm with my wife on that Sunday, that one Sunday off between January and May. My phone, as much as I can, stays put away, so I'm not answering a work email, or I'm not
Mm.
putting out a very small fire that one of my players is having. I'm trying to offload some of those things on those days. So it's been a challenge. Like you said, 8 years, it's felt like a long time, but those two things have really helped me.
How, the routine kind of hits me hard. I am a very, very seat of my pants type person. It makes the people who are working on my team struggle, because I'll come up with an idea, I'll knock out 60% of it, and they won't even know what happened. And then we'll be sort of behind or in a mess. And then my wife, she loves planning. And I personally feel like, I've never had to take anyone else's schedule into account. And so I'm consistently failing, but consistently attempting to improve communication of where I'm going to be some weekend, how how we're going to balance a travel schedule with 3 to 4 families. We both got like siblings everywhere, and families, but we're still working out the calendar thing. Should we do a Google shared calendar? Should we do a written calendar? And where does it all get written? So, how do you stick to a routine? And what do you mean by a routine when your life is literally could be anywhere, any weekend, and depending on your teams, if they win or not, that routine or it changes, your schedule changes.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. Especially with what we see on the AVP, right? When you're playing in a tournament that at any point you can get knocked out, and the schedule, in those circumstances, sometimes the schedule changes for the better. So,
Mm,
however much my wife is rooting for us, sometimes she enjoys an early 0-2 loss and sends me home on a Saturday. I haven't had a lot of those, I guess, fortunately or unfortunately for her. But you're right. It's hard to create the routines. I think for me, it's just, we look at things a little bit ahead of time. My wife sounds very similar to you. She likes to be a little more spontaneous, whereas I'm a creature of habit and I like to kind of get into a routine. It just helps me stay on track. That's something I learned in college when I was, a player, and I worked for the women's team, and I had to pay, work multiple other jobs to pay for tuition and housing and whatnot. Just having a great idea, but operating at less than 100% efficiency for me, I wouldn't put in my best work. And so in college, I learned, to be at my best, I needed to, hey, these were the hours I'm working, and these were the hours I was studying, and these were the hours I needed to focus on volleyball. Because if I was at volleyball practice
mm,
and I was worried about that tuition payment that I didn't have enough money for, and then I had to go do some tutoring that night, and I couldn't watch film or whatever it was, right? I started fraying, and then my buckets were just too full, and I was getting super stressed, dealing with lots of anxiety and things like that. So mental health, it took a dive. So I kind of used some of those experiences in college where I definitely failed and had many regrets. And now as a coach, a partner, a husband and whatnot, I'm trying to implement some structure. And
mm.
like I said, me being a creature of habit, having certain organizational skills that I've learned, um, it can get boring. Let's put it simply, right? It can get boring, doing the same thing every day for me. Knowing there's a goal, I believe that I can get there. It makes it worth it. But like you said, we need to be spontaneous just as human beings. I think that's healthy to get various, hormones in your body, just to dial those things in for yourself of joy and to release that. I think it's important to have those outlets. So there's a balance. So I don't want to sit here and say that my wife and I aren't spontaneous, and me as a coach, we don't do something every now and then in practice that's completely off the routine. But I do think just having that big picture structure helps guide and then recalibrate, which is the biggest thing that I like to do, is at the end of the year reflect on where were our strengths, where were our weaknesses, what did we, like you said, what was a great idea that we had that we know we can accomplish, but we didn't get to 100% efficiency, and can we get there, or was the idea too grand in the beginning and we need to scale it back? I don't even know if I've answered your question at this point, but I think we were talking about routines,
We
and
are.
yeah,
No,
I just think,
and I've got
from
to
sorry, let me finish this off.
go for
From
it.
a performance standpoint, I think for me, getting a routine lets me get laser focused on something and give the best that I can for that, area.
When you're creating a routine or a structure, you said, we put some things into play and then we need to measure it. How far down the road do you look? Do you plan? When you're assessing your team, because you've got a bunch of teams at Long Beach, and
Yeah.
you're currently working with one team, Troy Field and Chase Budinger, on the AVP tour. So you probably assess, and then how far down the road do you stick to one plan and then choose to reassess, or do you allow yourself to reassess in the middle of that? So do you set a certain time limit for those game changes, implementations?
Yeah, yeah, that's what a great thought. We the 10,000 foot view is always there, right? Me looking at a college athlete who enters as a freshman and we want to graduate as a senior. I think that view is a little bit more about us as human beings, just making sure that we are what we call leading generative lives. And so at our program, we want our players when they leave, 4 years down the road, we want them to be generating more than they're consuming, and that's like super super broad. So that's kind of that view. And so I know that there are so many factors and little, things that will stop us or help us. But I do know that from year 1 to year 4, from freshman fall to graduation, that's the expectation. And then the role that they take on, that's hard for me to predict at the beginning of their career, right? However, at the end of their career, I know that I can guarantee they will be courageous. They will be leading generative lives. They will be, giving and being aware of that. Right now, like you said, with the AVP team, Troy and Chase, it's completely different, right? We, at any given note or any point in time, we don't know, that partnership might dissolve, right? I don't have the control that I have like I do at my college program, right? One bad tournament, something said, a guy can back out and go, hey, I'm going to try something different.
Do you think that's good about the AVP, or do you think that's bad?
Man, it definitely adds a layer of uncertainty. I would imagine. I mean, I will ask you the same question in a second. I wonder, as a coach, I think it's tough because this is my livelihood. I'm signing on to a team where I want continuity. I want, like we're talking about, I would like to see something through from day 1 to day, or I guess on the AVP from month 1 to month 4, or for me, right, for my
Right.
scope is the summer. That's what I'm signing up for. And so as a player, I think it might be different. I think as players, maybe it's nice to be on edge, knowing like, hey, I got to perform. I'm playing up with someone maybe I shouldn't, I'm getting my crack at it. Or maybe you're the opposite role and you're like, hey, I've got the pedigree and I'm taking a risk on you. If you don't bring it, you're out. I'm finding someone else. So I think there's such a vast scale on the AVP because you're a vet. You've worked your way through from when you graduated your collegiate team and moved through the beach at different points in your career. I'm sure you've felt this, but I think it probably, depending on who you ask, it could hurt or it could help. And it just depends where you're at on that spectrum of experience and talent, right? Because maybe if you're an experienced player taking a risk on a younger guy, you want the freedom to say, hey, if you're not putting in the work and I'm seeing you out partying every day and I'm in the gym and you're not showing up, you're bailing on practices, maybe you want the freedom to back out. Whereas maybe if you're an international team or one of those top 4 US teams and you're trying to, make it internationally and qualify for Paris or whatever your international goals are, maybe there needs to be a layer of continuity and a layer of trust for team building reasons so that you go, hey, maybe we didn't accomplish our goals AVP 2022, but knowing our goal is to qualify for 2024, we need to have a really solid 23 qualifying year. Let's learn from our failures. Let's learn from those gaps in communication or whatever expectations, and let's move forward. So I don't know. I think that there's a definite spectrum for that. What do you think? I mean, in terms of,
I think that the majority of the players in our country, AVP, they don't stick together long enough to embrace system development, and go through it in a way. When you look at an NBA team or an NFL team, you kind of give somebody like a year, sometimes maybe 2, to learn the system, to work with a new
yeah,
offensive coordinator or get involved there. And yeah, there's instances where somebody gets 2 weeks up at the show and then they're back down, and you got that one chance to perform with the team. But also, those teams are all working on their systems long term and trying to integrate them. So I think players break up too much.
yeah,
Um, and I know usually why they do. You want to win. The dollar value is sometimes in your mind, even though it's like arguing over pennies.
sure,
But the difference of the qualifier, I think a lot of the shuffles happen right at the
yep,
bubble qualifier, like right where I am right now, where it's like, if I play with this guy, I'm just automatically in. So I save a day of hotels, a day of travel. I have definite money. So it's not like a gamble anymore. It's at least now my travel and everything is covered.
yeah,
And then you start measuring like, and I'm saving energy. But I think the older that I get now, I'm a lot less concerned with that and more, who do I want to play with and who do I think I can actually be good with,
mm,
instead of how good are they. I used to look as a younger players, how good are they? Now I look at who I can be good with. Like what am I not so great at and what do I pad at? Like me, digs per game, great. Hitting percentage, historically, like lower middle third. Digs per game, always high part of the tournament. And hitting percentage is a huge part of it. So I need somebody who's going to generate points in aces and blocks to pad my hitting percentage. So if you're not a
Yeah.
great server or big time blocker, I don't know if we're going to be a good partnership. So I look at it like that a little bit more, and I do think that players don't figure each other out enough. They don't have the one-on-one difficult conversations of even where you want to be emotionally. And I
Yeah.
think coaches, that third voice, having somebody like you out there saying, what emotion do you want to represent? How does that make you feel? Where do you want that? The times when we've had third parties look at our game, that's when you realize that you've been doing completely opposite things in opposite directions for months. And you're
For
like,
sure.
oh, what? You want that ball there?
Yeah.
Why didn't you ever tell me that? You just always thought I was missing by 5 feet every time.
Yeah, it's a really cool concept you bring up, that complementing your strengths, right? Like you said, if you're very high in digs per set, low in hitting percentage, you need probably a really good setter, put you in good spots. You need someone who's creating points from the end line. I mean, I think you having the wealth of knowledge that you have to look at it and just the maturity to look at it that way is such a valuable thing that would help in partnership creation, right? Where you brought up another good point. You don't have these playbooks. You don't have, like you brought up the NBA, NFL. That's something that I have the beauty of with Long Beach is we have like a 50-page playbook, like literally it's a handbook and a technical manifest is what I've called them. And the handbook is every single skill of beach volleyball that we teach, written out with YouTube clips, with game clips, with links to various videos of professional and collegiate athletes. This was built by myself, my assistant, by players. It's a live document. Every year it changes. We change terminologies, so we update the handbook. Then we have the technical manifest, which is a little bit for your ones and twos are like, we know this stuff. We've learned it through experience. Your threes, fours, fives, some of the I call them the transplants, the indoor combo kids that end up transplanting and then just becoming beach only because it's just such a fun sport and they're getting more looks there. They look at it like, hold on a second, this is 100 miles per hour. I'm going 0, maybe 5 miles per hour. I need a year to digest this. So we don't force that on them right away. But then they get a couple matches under their belt and they're like, okay, we need some technical stuff. We need some tactical stuff. We need a little bit more than just pass set side out or serve hard or block, etc. Right? So we have both those things, and that's stuff that professional AVP players don't have because, like you said, there's so many breakups that how much of that information do you want to share, and how much of that information do you even put out there, right? Like I think what I've noticed is, and you touched on it, is that emotional side is such a big aspect of partnership at that professional level because, like you said, I'm not intentionally trying to do this or that. I'm just trying to win. And if you don't get in tune with me or at least have a conversation with me about what's not working or where you think I'm weak, but I could easily fix it if you just tell me, but you're
Just
afraid
tell
to,
me.
yeah, you're afraid to tell me or have a hard conversation. Whereas me in that role, I mean, I think back when I was working with Casey and Chase last year, we were in Atlanta and in the winners semis, we lose to Try and Trevor. And it wasn't windy. It was very, it was hot. Don't get me wrong, but it was doable, right? There was no disadvantage on a side, but there was something going on with our setting. And Casey being just a phenomenal setter, right? All he needed to hear from Chase is, dude, you're a great setter. You've got this. You can put me right where I need it. That's all he needed. And he articulated that. But those are things that I don't think a 20, 25-year vet, without being a 20, 25-year vet, I don't think some of the younger players are doing that. Right. And it was just such a simple, easy conversation that led to them having that clarity. And then boom, next thing you know, they're winning a tournament. Now, does that always lead to a winning result? I don't know, but it definitely fortified a team that was very edgy. And for me, I was like, okay, hey, I'm going to facilitate, but if they can't articulate, what are we here for? Right. This is just, we're going to be back to square one. So it was cool to see Casey be able to have that emotional intelligence to be able to share that. That was such a simple, straightforward need that
Mhm.
Chase easily could do, right? It's just, hey, dude, you're great. That's all it took for Casey. Now it's different for everyone, but like you said, if you're not committing some time or you're getting in that partner shuffle, you're not giving yourself enough, layers of contact or layers of opportunity to develop and or even have that conversation.
Mm. Do you see certain personality mixes as more successful than other personality mixes? Now, I know you told me that your wife's a therapist. Um, so when I share this a lot, but before I got married, I was like, let's go. It's time for training. I'm going to go to like counseling. I'm going to get the marriage therapy. I read a bunch of books on like marriage and I learned a ton of stuff that I could bring to the court.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of it, I was like, wow, I've never asked my partner that. I definitely haven't asked my wife that. So that's goal number one. But if I just said that or asked that on the court, that would be great. Yeah. So are there any combinations of personalities that consistently or you've seen in your career consistently don't work, or two like archetypes that definitely do?
Man, you know, I think, well, using my own, I never played at a high level like yourself and your peers, but using my own life and my partner with my wife, my relationship with my wife, like we are complete opposite when it comes to sport. I think that is why we get along so well when we have conversations about sport. That helped me. She never played volleyball. She, played sports as a in high school, and I think collegiately she played on a tennis team at Santa Barbara City College, et cetera. But um, you know, she was so hungry and eager to learn about my area of expertise, and then likewise for me to her, that we meshed really well. Now as I kind of transpose that onto beach volleyball, I think of great partnerships in the past, and you've got, I mean, there's such a variety of personalities. I don't think I can drive down on one archetype, but I do think there has to be a balance. I don't think two fiery players, I think, that are trying to both get spotlight and both get some of the accolades. I think that can butt heads at times. I
Would
think
you
you need,
consider Casey fiery? To me, I think he's consistent. Like maybe when he came out, people would look at him and be like, "Dude's fiery. He's so emotional." But
yeah.
when he stays at such a high, like when you're looking at him, such a high emotional level of noise and thing, I don't consider him fiery. To me, fiery is more like a little bit up and down. I don't. I know that's interrupting, but would you consider him like fiery? I feel like he's just
Um,
so consistent.
yeah, I consider him one of the best like the epitome of beach volleyball trash talk and responding in a healthy way to it. So I don't know if that can be categorized into one word, but I think he is one of the best at involving the crowd, feeding off the crowd, listening to the crowd, because he's looking for those people that are talking crap, and he gets, he dialogues them, which I think is really cool. It's such an inclusive environment as a
A
fan,
little
right?
Mike
Hey,
Jordan type deal.
yeah, you're talking to me? What? Wait, you're a pro athlete and you're listening to me? Like, I think that's pretty cool. So I think he fed off all of that. And like you said, to me, it comes off as fire. Maybe I'm mistakenly using that word, but I think like the energy that he has complemented Chase really well, right? Where Chase is naturally a little more reserved, doesn't really play with big emotions or small emotions, just is very, he's focused on winning, he's focused on performance, and his competitiveness is there, and that can be misinterpreted sometimes. He doesn't talk, sometimes he's not high-fiving, whatever, right? But I think Casey being able to, like, in those moments where Chase got quiet, bring out a little bit of that energy from Chase. There was, again, I bring up Atlanta where we played Try and Trevor again in the finals, and we were like, dude, you got to go into this, and we got to have fiery Chase. And what do you know? Second play of the game, he blocks Trevor, and gives him a stare down through the net. And from my seat, I was like, okay, we got this. Like, that is very rare to see. And so when we have that understanding from one partner and it matches and complements the other partner for that moment. Because, Casey was getting every serve, right? Casey was
Yeah.
the focal point of these matches. He had to make plays on defense. He had to side out. He had to serve the ball well. Like, there was so much he had to do that in that moment, we compromised toward Casey's side of what he needed. And he was like, hey, we're going to need to be a little bit more edgy and a little bit more, let's get the crowd involved and let's play to some of those strengths. So I think in
But
that,
if Chase plays so well at a calm, collected level where he's very straight edge, not too many smiles, not too many
Mhm.
like reactions where he's pissed off, then wouldn't it negatively affect him if we like increased his emotional level to try to match Chase? Or
Yeah,
do you,
to match Casey. Yeah, and that was a conversation we had. I was like, hey, is this going to be distracting to you? I think that was the beauty of this team that I worked with, is it was just, they had already played together, right? And then they split. So they came back together, and then they having me, who I traveled to every tournament, and then not only got to travel, but Chase would stay with his wife Jess, and I would stay with Casey. So there was just constant conversation, you know what I mean, about, hey, what do we need? How do you want to approach this? And it wasn't like triangulation. Let me go talk to Chase. Let me go talk to Casey. Okay, let's talk together. It was just facilitation is really the best way to say it. There wasn't even mediation. I wasn't fixing anything. It was just, hey, let's facilitate. Let's kind of put a little bit of, a spark on the fire, and then they would just keep adding, gasoline, I guess would be I guess that's a terrible metaphor, but I think you understand what I'm trying to get at, right? Is they would just keep providing the fuel for these conversations. And so, yeah, initially I thought, because of my experience with college, I was like, okay, yeah, that can be so distracting, right? Is if I'm a naturally steady player, but I'm playing with a partner who's just high and low and high. And I'm like, dude, just get with me. Like, we're going to win if you can just stay here. And we're asking that player to go super high. It could be tough, right? It's asking too much. But I think, again, knowing I'm dealing with a professional athlete who, again, special circumstance, Chase had played in the NBA and had, layers and layers of competitive experience and maturity there. I think he handled that ask very well. Right. And it didn't hurt his game in that moment. And then knowing Chase, I think, sometimes when he does get a little quiet is when he's internalizing some things. So I was like, this is a win. It's a win-win, right? You're going to help your partner. You're also going to stay super engaged on the strategy that I'm giving you, or the tactics of blocking, or whatever it was. So it ended up being a really good thing for this pair. Now, hypothetical, if I'm dealing with someone who can't handle that, I think we have to maybe compromise a little differently, right? There's got to be a little bit of give the other way. I think that's you just have that conversation and decide. And then with trial and error, it's a little easier as a college coach to have trial and error, because you practice 5 days a week. You've got,
right?
Like you said, I have 24 players, so that's 12 pairs that I can compete with and play with and tinker with. Whereas on the AVP, it's you and your partner, and you're practicing 3 to 4 days a week, and you're playing one other team. You want to make the most of that day. So sometimes you want to do it your way and you don't want to compromise. It's just not worth it, because you're there to get better or whatever, right? You're working on one skill or one aspect of your game. But I think in this specific scenario, working with those two men, it was really beneficial to make that ask to Chase to come out a little bit, show a little bit of that fire, because then it just kind of shut the door on what Try and Trevor did really well. You know what I mean? Which is a little bit of that chirping. And so it was nice to play with that level of intensity against guys who usually do that against every other team. And it only worked that time, right? They ended up beating us in other tournaments. And so it's not foolproof, but I think it's a good starting point to get players to play at a higher level, or at least to try to find that, so it's not an anomaly, right? When they're just bumping up and winning matches against top teams. We don't want that. We want that to be the standard baseline, is that performance. And the anomaly is beating them in 2, or, beating them with a couple break point advantages, right? Winning 4 or 5 points. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're beating a team by 4 or 5, you're doing something right?
Yeah,
That's
you clean
4.
them up.
Yeah, you're
21-17 win is a demolishment.
exactly
21-16
right.
is
The
embarrassing.
21-10 win is a little scary, because they're coming back. And I think Theo Brunner has a theory about that. Have you ever heard that or no? No.
But I'm very interested.
You got to talk to him. I heard it in passing from someone else. But he says, if you lose by more than 12, you're pretty much guaranteed, or I'm sorry, if you lose by more than 12, you're pretty much guaranteed to win the next set.
Hmm.
He will be your expert on that. So I hint at that. So now, and all these listeners are going to go bug him about it, which I'm sure he'll love.
It's that hot hand theory. When like a percentage that you'll make a foul shot is always the same, right? If you're a 67% foul shooter, you're always the same. But then over time, will it like slide back? My college coach said something very similar. To our setters. He goes, if somebody who is a 400 hitter gets blocked or stopped 2 or 3 times in a row, you have to set him again
Yeah.
because statistically, like he's supposed to come back on that next one and for the next couple after that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that statistical flow would work, but then there's that bias in there where it's like, well, percentages are percentages and they can be microcosms, but they work out over time as well. So
I think your coach is very similar to me. I'm the same way. I would set my guy over and over and over again if I needed to get that. We'll find that percentage, right? 2, 3 errors. All right, those are his 3 for the match. We're getting 7 kills here somehow.
right. It's a big thing that I'll tell my partners, like, look, if we get wiped, it's like, we're not this bad.
Yeah.
So it's like we've gotten rid of all of the bad that we have for this match. So now we can just ride it.
Yeah.
And it's usually a good feeling. How much do you modulate people's energy like that, especially maybe on your college team, because you have, like you said, so many different athletes that you can. So do you take somebody who's getting too fired up and bring them back down because you know that it'll be harmful to their game? I think a lot of people default to fired up, like they want to be excited and go
Yeah.
into the game with high energy. But I know for myself that I actually don't play my best when I'm fired up. I play my best when I've got a high tension, but I'm not just going nuts. So how much do you modulate your players, and is it their energy and emotions, and is it different between NCAA and AVP?
Yeah. So I'm going to try to stay on topic because that's a great question, and like you said, there's a lot of directions I can. I learned this really cool system from Jeff Alzina. He was our volunteer, a handful of years ago, right before he started helping out UCLA. Now he's at Santa Clara as the head coach, but he had, a wealth of experience working with professional athletes. And so I asked him, I said, hey, our team at the time was, like you said, it was roller coaster. We were talent second to none. We were a great talented team, but our performance was, one day we're beating a pair against UCLA or USC, but then the next game we're dropping to an unranked team that we're like, 99 times out of 100 we probably beat that team, but that was the one time out of 100 we lose. And so he gave me this system of red and blue, right? Just using colors, right? Red are some of the high fiery emotions. Blue is some of the calm, cool, collected flow state emotions. So he gave us these lists, and so these players started thinking about, oh yeah, you're right, I got really red for that match. And so that was easy for us because as college coaches, you can't really, it's a little different on the AVP as coaches, but as college coaches, you can't really give much other than just cheering, right? So mid rally, during, or I guess between rallies, it's just, hey, great job. So we started kind of little gray area. We would say, hey, let's stay blue. You know what I mean? So the ref had no idea what we were saying, but that would remind players that we need to stay a little bit more calm in this moment. And then conversely, some moments I was like, we got to get red. Like we got to get a little fiery, get a little angry, but then let's settle back into blue at some point. So everybody was kind of, their mean, their average would eventually end up in the blue. But there were moments where, I tell my players, hey, if you need to throw sand or kick a ball, then emote. Like I want you to be authentic and do that. But I need you to have the emotional intelligence and the IQ and maturity to circle back and get back into a state of mind where you're going to perform at your best. And I think that.
So you're okay with the pressure valve release when somebody's
Absolutely.
like, ah, and
Yeah.
then they can
I
come
mean,
back?
I personify my anger. I call it Miguel. I don't know why I go that way, but I've just Michael and Miguel. I don't know. It's just for me. I give it. So anytime I'm in practice or when I was younger and playing and not doing something great, I would just grab my shirt. I think I learned this from Kobe. I would grab it, bite my shirt, and scream into my shirt, Miguel. Nobody knew what I was doing. I didn't want to use foul language. I knew, as a collegiate athlete, I knew there was an image we wanted to maintain, but it was my release. And I can't give you specific examples, but I know mentally after that, it helped me quite a bit. I just
Mm,
remember vividly the emotional side of things. I might have shanked the next ball, but that was just because they hit a good serve or whatever. Like it wasn't because I was
yeah,
pissed.
and
Or
everybody
I
from the
didn't.
outside is looking like, "Oh, he lost it," when,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
really, you had come back
No, no,
afterwards.
exactly. For me, I felt good. I didn't, again, it didn't mean it wasn't a sure thing, surefire method for me to win a match or to score the next point. But I knew that whatever I did, I would be operating at a little bit of a cleaner mindset, and I'd
Mm,
be more aware. Right, present is the big, the hip term right now. I would be a little more present in that regard. When I played 10 years ago, we didn't talk about. I came in at UCLA playing for skates. We didn't talk about anything that had to do with mental health. It was just
hmm,
show up, you play, you compete, you watch some film. He was big on film. You watch some film, you show up the next day, you do it again, right? There wasn't, hey, how are you feeling today? Is feeling some anxiety, some stress? No, no, no. You checked all that at the door, and I'm sure it was the same for you, right? You just, and that I think that's been destigmatized over time. I think there's a lot more focus on flow state and getting yourself into that zone, right, of high performance where I can probably count on my hand 5 times or less that I ever actually felt that.
mm,
And I think some players get it a lot and some players never get it, and so I try to teach so your original question, how do I modulate that with the athletes? I think with the collegiate athletes, it's an awareness building exercise of just
okay.
start the conversation with them. Hey, look, here's a match. You were really, really great, but how much of it was skill and how much of it was anger or frustration? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
is that the way you want it to look for the rest of your season or
So
for
you do
your
have
week?
that conversation
Oh, of
of
course.
what emotions were you feeling? Do you wanna repeat that? Did
Yep.
it did it match your performance, and was that the reason that you performed like that?
Correct. I think that's something that we always will debrief is,
Mm,
Christian, my assistant, and myself and our volunteer, whoever it is at the time, I try to use those as opportunities. Because again, if for us and the way we build our program, we're not winning a lot of those matches when we go really red and fiery and
okay.
angry. Like we're just not winning those matches. Those are usually the matches where we get ourselves into third game, and then we need a little bit of wherewithal to focus and reframe and kind of resort ourselves, repackage some things. And then we end up losing those games 16-14 or 17-15 with an accumulation of errors at the end, right? Like we would be up 14-11 and drop the game 17-15 down the stretch, right? Or we'd be up 13-12. Or sorry, 13-11. We need a couple side outs and they get a few break points on us late in the game, right? So we were identifying those as opportunities to, hey, let's debrief on this instead of talking about you should have hit this on game point. Let's talk about the emotional side of it and say, hey, was that the way you want to replicate games moving forward? Did you feel under control? Is the highs are those places that we can replicate when you are feeling some of those emotions. So a lot of it, like I said, I keep using that word emotional intelligence. We're trying to build a rapport and a language around that where we can talk about that as something that's normal. You know what I mean? It's
Yep.
just that's just what we talk about, as opposed to what it is right now, where I think there's this stigma around, hey, coach, I'm a little angry. I don't know how to, should I hide that, or I'm a little sad. Should I just check that at the door and never deal with that? I think we're trying to destigmatize that a little bit because, again, our program, we have to be high thinkers, we have to be problem solvers, we have to be in tune with some of those things. And I use the example, like I think our program is one of the best when it comes to win strategy and playing in the wind. We practice from 1 to 4 p.m.
Oh,
every
geez.
day. We get
That
this
is wind
huge
central in Southern California.
you
Yeah.
know you and we did that for a number of years. So my seniors this year, we played a tournament down at Rosie's Dog Beach in Long Beach here, and it got really, really windy, and we're playing some top teams, and it just felt comfortable, and
Mm,
so I knew then that we were not red. We were very blue. We were very calm. We were thinking through strategies and service locations, and just as a coach, when you don't have the ability to tell them every point what to do, seeing your team doing what you're thinking they should do, or at least doing a training method that we've implemented in practice, it gives the confidence to know that they are present. And then we only have 3 coaches, 5 courts playing at a time. I can now leave that court and go to another court with confidence, knowing, okay, we might lose, we might win, but at least we're going to do it with control. And the next time we play, it can be a tactical thing. Hey, let's try these tactics next time. Whereas if it's an emotional thing as a coach, I'm like, you guys got to be able to articulate your emotions so we can kind
yeah.
of better approach it next
Well,
time.
is there I mean, because there's two things that I always think of when emotions, like how much are you going to let it affect you? Because if we talk about like kind of therapy and meditation, it's recognizing the emotion that I'm feeling and just recognizing it. Trying not to attach yourself to it or ride the wave necessarily. So once somebody recognizes that they're mad, are they supposed to ride that and behave a different way? Or are they supposed to recognize it, then be like, I'm mad and ditch it and then come
Yeah.
back to a certain center? Which
Yeah.
which should they be doing? What do you
Uh,
preach as a
well,
teacher?
so that's where we have those conversations for, I think you have to cater for us. We have to kind of meet players halfway, if not a little bit more toward what they're most comfortable with at that time.
Mm,
Now, I feel as a coach, it's always my job to kind of pull them to the edge of their comfort zone and keep them right on their edge. So balancing that is tough, right? I have a player at the ones this year who is just I mean, I guess a pair, I should say. My blocker she's from Italy. She's got tons of experience, international, playing FIVB, whatever. But she just said, I just need to side out. I just need to serve. Like she would package things so simply in her mind.
mm,
Like we are losing because I did not side out. Whereas the other player's like, no, 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 we're losing because we're not hustling, we're not going for balls, we're not hitting it hard enough. Like we need to have this effort mentality. We need to just go for it. You know what I mean? And I'm like, keeping them together was, a good learning experience for me. They didn't finish the year with terrible losses. They were a very middle of the top 20, middle of the
mhm.
pack team in a sense. They're a top team, don't get me wrong, but they had just as many wins as just many losses against the top 20 teams, right? So I don't think either of their ways doing it, separately was the right call. And so for me, when I'm dealing with each of those athletes, I think getting the higher energy output to kind of oscillate a little bit more to find and blend with the lower and try to find that middle ground is when they
Mm,
played their best, right? So not asking my high energy player, hey, you've got to just drop everything. I still wanted her because that's when she felt best, right? That's when she was making the best,
ah,
running around and seeing the game. I wanted her to be on her edge, but also comfortable enough to think clearly and tactically build patterns and recognize patterns and whatnot on defense.
okay.
Whereas my blocker said, "Hey, we've just got to serve tough, keep it simple, and I'm going to pull." And I was like, "You're playing at the ones here. That's not going to work. This is playing Tina Gradina at USC. The girl she can beat a puller, right?" So, and that's just one example. That's a big name everybody's going to know. But every single program has the ability to score. So if you're not, you know balancing some of that. So what I learned from that pair is I think some of the simplicity is helpful, some of the fire is helpful, and then depending on which player I'm speaking to or which pair we're working with, um, and then where we're at in the match, you've got to kind of facilitate that conversation with those players and get them to understand this is the solution to the
Okay.
current problem, and it could change next match, right? Because those external factors are different every single game, right? For my ones pair, it was a little bit about tactics. Hey, are you guys even thinking about tactics, or are you so upset that you're not siding out and keeping it simple, and are you so upset that your partner's not fiery that you're not even thinking about the tactics of how to score the points, right? Because then
Oh,
next thing you know, we've given up 3 break points. We're down
energies on your partner
five
instead of the
two on a
game.
side, yeah, 5-2 on a side switch, and the game is gone. We're over. It's over, right? So I think it varies level to level. I think that's the biggest. I'm not trying to give a cryptic answer here, but I think it does vary within my program, level to level, pair levels, right, 1 through 5. I
Well,
think
if somebody walks into practice and they're like, "Coach, I'm pissed today."
yeah,
Do you allow them to be pissy that day because that's like where they're comfortable and what their emotional state was, or do you tell them, "Hey, I get that. Let's find a way to drop it so that you can get back to what our practice environment is," because there's a lot. In the last 5 years we've brought e- emotions and how everybody feels into the forefront of conversation,
yeah,
where the gyms that we grew up in were, hey, leave it at the door.
hmm,
Those problems will still be there when you get out. You can pick them up back, when you leave the gym, but here, this is how we behave. So when somebody walks into your gym and they're pissed, visibly, audibly, do you allow them to ride the pissiness, or do you say you need to fix yourself right now and get on this emotional scale?
Yeah, it's that's what a great idea. I think it's hard, to for me, it takes a lot of time to build that trust with my team. You know what I mean? To where they'll actually be authentic enough to share that with me. I think my assistant coach will hear that before I do, and then he'll share it with me. But I would hope that they would share it. Once they do, I think the conversation is let's unpack it a little bit. What is causing it? Is it someone here? Is it your past result? What usually beach volleyball for our team is a safe haven, right? That is where they want to go to take out some of their frustration. That is where they want. That is their place of
That's a big
calm.
usual, but then
Yeah,
like your entire friend and peer environment is also, and your competition is also sitting there in the same gym. So sometimes, another person on the team is also like, uh, what you perceive as causing you stress. But go on.
yeah,
So it should be the release,
I
from the
get it.
rest of life. But sometimes it's like you're going into the gym where your worst enemy that's holding you down is.
Correct. So that was what I was going to get to. Was usually safe place, right? So the stress of school gone. Okay, when it is a player or a teammate that's causing the pain or the frustration, that's where we do, have a conversation. Hey, you're going to make it work today. And when we're done with this, we will set up a time to have a conversation, right? Because I don't want those conversations to happen in the middle of practice. I don't think
Okay.
that should be the focus. I think if you're coming to practice and you haven't dealt with the conflict, you're not, that's not how we conflict resolve. We don't do it in that moment, right? Like we're going to problem solve. We're going to try to make it work
Mm.
to the benefit of the team. And if that can't happen and you're part of the problem, you're both removed. And you can and we'll, what I mean? So we've kicked players out of practice before. I've kicked pairs. We do like a field goal touch. So they basically go and run field goals until they're calm. Like we have all these different methods to allow them. Like I said, I allow the ball kick as long as you shag it. I allow the sand throw as long as you don't
So
throw
let's
it
see,
at a
Shag.
teammate. So we have some mechanisms to deal with the small, but when it is a big T, like big trauma, big trouble, that's when we have to have a conversation. It can't be, we try to not have those conversations in that practice. We try to get away from the practice environment. I don't even like doing them in my office because I think there's some feelings around coming into your head coach's office where it can be a little bit of a scary place. So we try to do those out on campus or, get a meal or do it off site. And then, whoever's causing that frustration, usually everybody's there and we just hash it out. Um,
I think that sounds
Sometimes,
kind of like what I think a good marriage should be. When you know that something's on the table or under the surface, it's like, but now it's not the time that we're gonna deal with this. Like, let's pick a time where we can actually do it. Like, maybe we're not gonna argue about this little thing in front of all our friends at dinner. Like, we'll table this till we get home, or any priorities that you have in your relationship. Like, okay, but is this our priority to talk about and fix right now?
yeah.
If it's not, then we need to decide on a time and agree on a time when we can fix it, but we have to be here for each other now and set that. I don't know if you can set emotions aside or tuck them in for a little while. you know,
I think, yeah, it's tough, right? Like I think of my wife and I, and when we fight now, and I have a 2.5-year-old who's starting to basically like a parrot say everything we say, right? So I'm like, okay, hey, she's probably better at this. She's like, she's listening, or let's unpack this later. And then just naturally, I hear that from her a lot. We do the same with our team, and I think it's important because if you're the ones pair and you're walking around with this entitlement and ego and thinking you can get away with certain things. And if I'm the fives player looking at that, or if I'm a freshman redshirt, I'm thinking that's the accepted behavior. That is what I'm going to start naturally doing just by process of diffusion, right? I think as a coach, I have to be very careful there, right? We cannot, and that's where some of those conversations have to happen outside of practice, because it's like, look, I get it, Mark, you're doing some great things for our program, and there's a lot of pressure on you. And it's hard. Our program is not like a USC where you've got just 10 players who are going to go on and play pro. And you saw, I mean, with the tournament AVP this weekend, there's like 5 or 6 USC players in the semis are better, right? Power to them for being able to do that. But we're the type of program where, our ones are going to compete with 1 or 2 other pairs in practice, maybe 3. And then the rest of our team are all competing against each other for like a mid 3, 4, 5 level.
Mm.
That kind of makes sense, right? Because we
Yep.
still have a lot of our athletes that are play high level. Our blockers are coming from the indoor team, right? We've got a lot of combo athletes coming that aren't there in the fall. And so when our top players start getting treated a little bit differently, or we let them get away with some of these big emotions that other players are exhibiting, but we're like, no, this is your first year here, what do you think you're doing? We have to be very careful around that, right? So that's why I like having those conversations outside of practice. Hey, while you're here, we do what's best for the team, and you're here to make your teammates better. We're leading that generative life. We're trying to help create that atmosphere where we're going to give more than we consume. And then offsite or outside of practice, let's now talk about your needs and how I can better coach you to satisfy that, to get you to be the best version of yourself, right? Or how can your partner help that? And that's when we sometimes check players and go, okay, what you're asking is so unrealistic, it's never going to happen. Or, you know what? I'm sorry, I never thought of that. I'm sorry, I've been closed-minded and I didn't think of that for you. And that's where I think a lot of growth happens for our program, is we're so willing, and my assistant Christian, we're so inviting to those conversations that we get a lot of growth out of players for that reason. And so I think we avoid a lot of those big outbursts in practice because the door is always open to have that conversation outside of practice. So, I'm not here to say that we never have those. I think we have probably our fair share of them, just as many as any other top program. But I think we're nipping it in the bud pretty quickly, right? With the first try,
Mm.
just because we have some good mechanisms, and we're inviting of that, right? Like, we invite players to be authentic and to understand their point of view, and why would that cause them to act that way? Like understanding someone when they fail. I think so often people are like, hey, you just didn't bring it today, and we're gonna sweep it under the rug, and next day you got to be more competitive, or like you said, more fiery, or whatever. I think breaking down what actually is preventing us from being a better version is important, right? I think that's where a lot of our conversations will get to, and it's not easy, right? Like, you're dealing with an 18 year old and asking them to be a big adult here, and articulate feelings that no one has ever held them accountable for. And
Articulating
so,
feelings is not easy. Like,
no,
understanding what you felt, why you felt it, where it came from, and then like being able to apply or control it.
correct.
That's it's not easy.
Yeah. So I think just normalizing that and inviting them to share is the first step. And so that's why I think, when we look at how do we approach the various levels of player in that hierarchy, because no matter how much we try to break that down, there's just a natural hierarchy of power ranking of,
Yeah.
hey, this player's the ones, and we're not really, she's kind of solidified her spot. She's now a senior, right? Whereas these are freshmen. There's no hazing that goes on. That's long gone, but it's just a matter of, right, that maturity. And there's just naturally, with a 22 or 23-year-old, there's a little bit more confidence. And so I think those younger players feel that imposter syndrome and hide from it, whereas we try to bring them to the forefront and let them know, hey, we're only going to be good if you guys can jump on board with this. And until you do, we're going to kind of be plugging more holes than fingers, right? Like, we're going
Yeah.
to have 11 holes for 10 fingers. So I think it's important that we for at least that's how our program is doing it, and it's been a healthy way for players to then understand, hey, what is appropriate in practice, and when can you have your outbursts? Because we still want you to be able to emote. Like, that's a huge part of the sport, and that's the culture of the sport, right? When you watch it on the professional level, these players are emoting. They're not just staying blue the whole time, right? But
Now, are you having those conversations with your AVP teams when you get to the pro? Like, when you're coaching Jared and Bill, I think, and Chase and Troy, super high emotional, kind of
yeah.
a high mix, but like likes to play positively, much like Casey. Are you having as many of these talks about how they're regulating, or what they like to play at with the AVP? Are you talking about it very differently than you do with your college women?
The framework is the same. I've had so I've coached AV for 4 years. I was with Jeremy and Kame that first year,
Came,
and
sorry.
that was like the epitome of complementary personalities, right? Like, they just gelled, and they knew their goal was to win, and they both got their first win in Seattle. That was really cool to be a part of. And I think that really worked. Like I look back on that Seattle tournament and we didn't scout. We didn't watch film. We just literally went out. There was like this street fair. We went out and listened to these high school kids playing rock music, and we like partied with these, not partied, you know what I mean? We hung out with these parents of these rock band kids, and we were just, they just were there. They were in tune. They were authentic. They knew what they wanted. And Jeremy goes on an absolute tear on Sunday, and Kane played some great defense inside out behind him, right? Like they just felt so comfortable that it was very easy for them to be the best versions of themselves as players. So for me, there wasn't much conversation that needed to be happening around, hey, some of the emotional, because there just wasn't very many emotional conflicts. Jeremy was intense focus, but high energy. Kane was a little bit more calm. You know, he's your friendly Canadian, right? He didn't want to piss anybody off his first year as an American US citizen, right?
Don't want to
So
get kicked out.
yeah, exactly. So there was just a natural balance, right? And then you take it to the next year with the quarantine year, which was super weird because you practiced for 5 months with, I was with Kame and Chase. So it was smoke and mirrors, right? They were having great practices, nothing on the line. We didn't ever need to have any conversations. And then you get bam, 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 3 straight weeks of tournaments with very, well, you know, they made it to Sunday each tournament. So we took Monday off. We went light Tuesday. Like there was never time. And because we didn't travel, there was never any opportunity to really connect with one another. I was very shy because I was like, man, Chase is kind of intimidating. Kame, I kind of know a little bit, but I was still huge imposter syndrome, like second year coach, never have played these guys. Like I remember when I played high school against Chase, I was an oppo, he was an outside. That dude was probably 3 feet above my block, bouncing balls, hitting my setter in the head. I was like, man, I don't know what I'm doing. So there was just this like natural intimidation, right?
Mm.
And so that was just a very tough year to have conversations. And then so I was like, okay, hey, I need to put my big boy pants on, and I'm not going to let it happen this year with Chase and Casey. Like Casey's intimidating. He's an Olympian. He's, you know, done so much winning. Second year with Chase, I kind of earned his respect after that first year. I stuck with him. He, you know, we had a good trust thing going on. We worked a lot one-on-one because Casey was living out in the valley, so we didn't get to practice as much with him. Whereas
Right.
Chase and I are both in the South Bay, so I did so many individuals with Chase, and we just connected just because we had been around each other so much. So
Well, what are
that
those conversations like when you're working with Chase one on one? Is it him saying, "Hey, Mike, I need this," or you saying, "What do you want to work on?" Or you saying, "Hey, Chase, I think we have to add this to your game." And if you come
yeah,
to a disagreement there, what happens? It's tough when there's only two or three. There's no hierarchy. It's always like,
yeah, yeah.
so
So that
what does an
was
individual, I guess, with Chase look like when you decide what you want to do? Do you go back to your bird's eye view and say, okay, this is where we're trying to get this month. So in order to do that, this is how this practice has to look? Or does he have a lot of input as well?
Yeah, well, it was definitely a lot of input both ways. I think we sat down and watched a lot of film. I think that was what made it easy. Every Monday morning, I went to his house. We were watching film. We, identified that was something we started doing with Kame and Tyler Hildebrand when they were kind of in with USA, and then when that frayed and that split, it was something we just kept doing. And so we said, hey, this is off-season training. What do you want to get better at? Serving and pulling. So we did like 2 straight hours of just very generic, like he understood that building skills takes time, and I think that was just made it so easy for me because that's how I think. I'm
Mm.
like, you've got to have an understanding, a great mental image of what you're trying to work on. What do you look like doing it, which is why him watching film was such a nice thing because he was watching it from like a biomechanic sense and not a judgmental sense, like, hey, what do I look like? Oh man, I look so stupid, or damn, that looked really cool, let's post that on Instagram. Like, it was more just, how can I get better? Because I need this skill to win. Even though he knew, like, pulling, he would only use that once a game. But we went out and did thousands and cataloged thousands of pulling reps, where now it's just, people think he's just athletic. And I'm like, dude, we worked so hard on getting him to pull and react quickly to a hard driven ball. Like I was hitting, I mean, I don't hit nearly as hard as you guys, but I was hitting some hard balls off of a 40-inch box, crushing him from, trying to shorten the time he had to react. And we just built that skill, right?
So it
And
was just rep on rep. It wasn't,
yes,
I mean, I think I see a lot of coaches trying to come up with libraries of drills. And uh, y- for Chase, who's somebody who understands it, maybe kind of like that Kobe mindset of shooting threes for 3 hours.
yeah,
Like, no, I'm just shooting threes for 3 hours. Yeah, I move a little bit right, I move a little bit left, I take a step back, but I just have to train my body to make this three. Is that the kind of practices that you guys were running, where it's
Yeah.
just we're
So
out here repping the same thing for an hour and a half until your body masters it?
And don't get me wrong, I tried to get creative and you're right. We had to just do 3 months of the same thing a couple times a week. I mean, it wasn't 2 hours, it was about 30 to 40 minutes of it. And then we would do something different. So we would still, touch on other skills to keep it fresh. Cause again, I'm routine. I was like, this is easy. I just hit, but I don't want players to get bored and I get it. Right. So we would try to give it a little flair every now and then, but in its essence, it was just repetitions. It was
Mm.
cataloging very diligent, deliberate, diligently planned and deliberately executed repetitions so that we knew that when we were in a game and I was like, hey, dude, right hander on the right, set's coming over his shoulder, pull seam and just dig a ball. He said he would know that language. He's like, got it. Right. I didn't need his partner to know what we were talking about. I just needed him to be ready to make that play at 19 all if our serve connected, or, you know what I mean? Just
Yep.
being able to have the confidence that you've built that skill. Then as a coach, I can ask you to do it with confidence. I'm not drawing up some play going, oh man, I hope this works. Like I was like, if this happens, if A happens, I know B will happen. Now I don't know C, us getting a kill will happen, but I know we'll get a great opportunity, which as you know, as a hitter, that's all you can ask for is a swing
Yep.
for the game. If you have a swing for the game and you have a decent hitting percentage, more times than not, it's going to go your way. Right.
Yeah.
So we were trying to get to that level. And so working with him was really, I don't want to say easy, but it was easier because he was so invested in the film review and the film study and coming to that. And that's why I said it was both of us, right? Like I built the drill and he picked the skill. And so a lot of those skills oftentimes on my list would match up. And so there was just natural synergy there. So we were really jazzed up when our skills matched up. So emotionally, the conversations we didn't really get into because it was just, let's keep it straightforward. He wants to get better at this. This is how you do it. That second and third year when I worked with him, he understood, okay, this is a guy who kind of knows what he's talking about. I got him. Like, we're going to get it done. And so, that third year with Casey, that's what we were able to build, right? And Casey was super inclusive and super inviting of my ideas, knowing that he's like, I need a third set of eyes. Like, I know that there's things that I do that I get very tunnel vision on, and I need you to reset me, or I need you to tell
What
me
ideas does Casey have after such a long career that he invites you to mitigate, or what, as a coach who's way younger with actually like less experience, but he's hired you as a coach? How does What do you think that you bring that he doesn't see? Or do you say, hey, do you see this? Or is it just your voice that needs to be there? When you say that he invited you in some different ideas,
yeah.
what ideas did you have that he hadn't yet experimented with or tried?
Yeah, most of it wasn't technical, that's for sure, right? I'm not gonna go out there and say, "Hey, Casey, this is how you hand set." I was like,
Fix his funny hands.
yeah, exactly. I wasn't trying to fix the passing or anything. The arm swing hitting from his left shoulder. All I tried to do was enhance some of his strengths, right? So knowing that he hit left shoulder, I was like, hey, you have to clean stage every time. If I was playing you, I would serve you to this zone because it takes away a certain element of your staging, which makes you more predictable, which over time, if I'm playing you for 21 points, I know late, if I'm in a game, I can get you over time because I've got the pattern. And that's just, so I would say, hey, if I was scouting, this is what it would look like. And so that idea of like really nailing things so he would keep all of his options. So like, as a righty on the right, if he kicked out, he would lose some of his power down the line. Whereas, so his teams would start running twos against him and he would miss some of so there were certain tactical things that I was just tracking in a little notebook. Like, hey, you've hit 6 straight deep angles or sharp angles or cut shots. They might be picking up on this. Let's try staging this way. Open up your vision. And, because he's the type of player that doesn't need a huge vert, right? So I was trying to make sure that at all times he had full vision and then he had his body line power so that if nobody ever got there, he could just quickly, hit a ball, right? So
your job was to more recognize his patterns that he
tendencies for
probably
sure.
can't pick up on, like, the difference between a 275 hitter and a 300 hitter. One's in the Hall of Fame, one probably gets kicked out of the MLB pretty easily, is one hit every 2 weeks.
Yep.
So it's like something we can't track on our own, but your job was to pick up on those tendencies and then try
Yeah.
to suggest
And
solutions that
And
might help.
most of it, because Casey's just such an experienced defender that I wasn't going to change where he started or what he saw, but I was calling plays from like, hey, this could be a pattern, right? This player's hit when he's in trouble, high line,
Mm.
right? So let's set that up however you want to set it up. Hide behind chase, flash out early, do a juke. I don't care. But we're going to get beat on a cut shot. We are not going to get beat on a high line at 2019 when it's our game point. Like, we are going to be on that. So that was some of the ideas was, okay, let me track that tendency or the pattern. Let me catalog it and give it to you guys. And if you want to use it, use it. I have no ego in this. I mean, I'm making such a small percentage of I have such a small impact. If I can steal you guys 1 or 2 points late, I think that was really a big contribution for him, right? Is being able to just get him into a spot that he might have already done, but it just gave him the confidence to do it because the numbers backed it.
Okay.
Or because my set of eyes completely, granted I'm biased, I want them to win, but very unbiased because I'm not the one running around getting beat, right? Either the ball lands or it gets ducked. But he's like, no, I'm trying. I just said, hey, this is where the ball's going. Build it how you want. You're going to get the dig and you're going to transit and have a chance, right? And Casey, more times than not on transition on game point, he's putting balls away, right? That's a tough person to stop on transition game point. So I think that's where I probably had my biggest impact, was more on the scoring phase. And then the side out phase, it was more about just little staging things and little arm mechanic things, just saying, hey, you're getting a little tired. It's 110 degrees out. Maybe you're dropping your elbow, so let's factor that in. Let's not try to go for that sharp cross court where try's going to just grab it and clamp you, right? Like, just
reminders of things that we're supposed to know, but just, like, why would a professional athlete have a personal trainer? You've been doing it for 30 years. It's give you that reminder so that you optimize in that moment that you need to. So you are still giving technical advice. It's just, but I guess for guys at this level, it's reminders to stay that little extra 1% that's going to make that
correct.
difference in that moment.
Yeah, because if we can, the more I was able to give those reminders and he checked, it was just like you said, those 1%, those little things add up to big things. And that without knowing, I can't predict anything, but sitting there, if there was an opportunity to do that, I said, I'll have a regret if I don't say this or give this idea. Now, if he doesn't use it, maybe then that's his regret. But at least it was said. We can debrief on it, or we can go, hey, next time, don't tell me that. Like, I did that with Chase once. I was like, dude, let's mix the serve up. And he's like, Mike, I just got 2 aces. Why the hell would you tell me to mix up my serving? Because then he missed the next 2 serves. And I was like, ooh, okay, my bad. I won't do that again. You know what I mean? So it's not always clean. I can't sit here and tell you that everything we did was perfect, but it definitely was more about, the tendencies and trying to get them, like I said, stimulate some ideas, and then using their experience to our advantage and letting them kind of run with it, right? And just saying, hey, this is what I do well. Mike told me this is where the ball's going. That's the idea. We want to stop that. I'm going to go do it this way.
If you're at a tournament, so let's pull this back to kind of a big bulk of our audience, which is a lot of B to AA tournament players.
Mm-hmm.
If you have 5 or let's call it, you have 10 minutes to scout a team and you have no film.
Yeah.
What is the easiest homework or thing that you could give to somebody who hasn't played for 15 years, but what do they look for? And then what could they implement to play their next team? So they're reffing their pool play match and they're going to play that team next. What would this person look for specifically, or count, or try to pick up on?
Yeah, great question. So I think, the first, and that's an environment we're always in at the collegiate level too, is sometimes, the top teams you're getting film, but sometimes you're in a tri-dual and you're playing Coastal Carolina. We've never played them. We've never seen them. They're a good team. We know they're going to bring it, but we played the first match, they played the second match, and then we play each other the third match. So we got to see them, right? So I try to tell the players, hey, let's categorize as best we can each player's side out. What are their tendencies? Are they a shooter? Are they visual? Are they a spiker? Right? And that at least gives us a starting point of how we want to defend them.
Is there a moment that that they're that? Like, is it in warm-ups? Is it the way they open the game, or is it when they're in trouble?
I like to say the first 2, side switch, that first side, what are they doing? Right? Are they going to their high line? Are they kind of getting up there, delaying, looking? They kind of, all players like to establish rhythm, right? So I say, hey, what are they doing to get in rhythm? Right? Now, if there's a huge side advantage, that obviously breaks a little bit. But if it's a neutral game, you can kind of just say, hey, this is a rhythm player based on their shooting, they're spiking, or they're visual, right? Now it's a little different on the men's side. I think probably most people default to spiking, right? I think there's a few that'll be what I call combo, where they'll, like a Casey, right? He's going to spike the balls he should spike. He's going to shoot the balls he's going to shoot. He's very hard to strategize against, right? But the vast majority, you're looking at crunch time moments after a timeout, after a mistake, right? When they do get a little frustrated, what is their next play, right? What does the timing look like? Do they move? Do they change tempo? Do they change location of swing? Do they kick out, right? Like little nuances that become big patterns, right? Like if you're the type of player that anytime you make a mistake, you shoot high line, right? That's something that's important to know. And as a defender, I need to choose my moment to go get that ball. Do I give you 6 high lines to start the game, knowing that, hey, Mark's a top player. I'm lucky if I can get into a 19-19 game, but at 19-19, when I'm serving, I'm going for that high line. And is Mark going to hit that ball? So it's like just having a plan, I think, is important. And then if you're wrong, you're wrong. But going in and I think too often people are like, oh, we'll just ball read. We're good. We'll ball read, right? You go block, I'll go defend. We'll figure it out.
They get pissed off after every single lost point.
Correct,
when there's no actual defensive strategy to.
Yeah, and then for that whole next 10 seconds between you, when you serve to us, all we're talking about is, hey, dude, how did you not see that? Or body language, right? Like if you're a blocker and they shoot high line and you were ball reading and you're like, how did you not see that? And I'm like, I don't know. I was ball reading cut shot, right? Like you guys will be stuck on that thought. Meanwhile, they just short serve ace you, or they short serve you option right into their plan, right? This is a game of chess, right? So the more you can think cleanly and clearly, the better. So if you can, and you can be wrong, but just going in with a plan of, hey, this is how we're going to attack and this is how we're going to defend. But I say that with the caveat of don't play to your weaknesses, right? Play to your strengths. And what I mean by that, what I mean by that is if they are a spiker, but you're a terrible blocking team, don't stay and block. Find a way where if you're a good serving team, amp up your serving and say, hey, if we miss 5 serves, it's worth it because we're going to get them out of system. And now I can pull and I don't have to stay and block as much. So I eliminated their spiking range.
Okay.
And now I can pull into that range, or I can slide my defender into that range, right? So just instead of trying, oh, crap, these guys are going to spike every ball. So I've got to now block and figure out how to leverage and go out of body and run a lot of 4s or short serve them and do this. Try to eliminate their strength with one of your strengths. Okay. So it takes a little bit of time to do that. Because again, if you're not a good blocker, but you're crushing balls and bouncing balls, I'm in a natural tendency want to stay and get involved. That's what they want you to do. You're playing right into their hands. That's when they'll just shoot over or whatever, right? So I think just balancing that is important, right? Whereas if it's you take it from the lens of like, okay, well, I'm not a super great blocker, but now you go into a match and you try to get 5 blocks when you've never gotten more than 2 or 3 statistically,
or you're 5'8" and you're still
up
there trying to stop the 6'6", getting mad that you don't block.
Because when you do that, you'll notice, and again, that's the beauty of our sport, is we have so many statistical tools that professional players don't have access to. Like we film every practice, we film and stat every match. The players have a database where they can go on and click matches for the last 8 years and get all the stats from it, right? So they, depending on how much they want to research, they can see, and we set goals for them. Hey, like if you're siding out at 67%, then your serving percentage theoretically needs to be 33% or higher to win a game, right? Wow. They can pull that data, and they right then and there, they're like, oh, you're right. I sided out at 50%, but I scored at 55. So, it's a sliding scale. So that, that usually applies for our lower pairs, like our 5s. We're playing a lot more pull and a lot longer rally, right? The side out drops a little bit, the lower levels. But at the 1s, 2s, 3s, I mean, you're siding out 70%, you're usually pretty safe, right? Whereas if it's, 60%, you're not as safe as you might think you would be at a more professional level. So I don't know where I was going with that, but having access to that, I think, helps the players make certain decisions about how to match up against another team, right?
When you've come up with a strategy, and you said like you have to have a strategy, and I very much agree. I think that people play 1 point at a time, and when I see them play or get upset, I'm like, you're playing checkers. You're playing like little kid checkers where you just move a piece and then you're still upset that you haven't jumped a piece yet, instead of this long game of figuring out what I'm trying to do, what balls I'm trying to get, or what balls I think that they're going to hit, and when I'm going to dig them, versus like sitting there and playing that read game. But do you have any advice for players when they choose a strategy or I'm only going to dig hard cross and high line?
Yeah.
How long before should they go continuing to not pick up a ball
Yeah.
before they should change their strategy?
Yeah, I think it varies. So, like with Troy and Chase, we go like 2 or 3 balls. And I say 2 or 3 because the caveat is serving. If we're serving the ball well, then maybe there's like, okay, hey, let's let 3 balls go because that might have been the anomaly, right?
Okay.
Whereas if we're not serving the ball well, then it's 2 balls. Like after 2, if we're running the play and they've figured it out, we might need to change the play or change the look or serve the other guy or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's usually we give it 2 opportunities, right? Because again, this should all be happening after you've established the pattern that you expected is true, right?
Oh,
So, this isn't point
oh, so
one.
you
Hey,
don't you
let's,
don't enter a point blind against another team and try something twice and then change it.
it depends, right? So, like when we played USC this year, I told my team, I want you guys executing on your patterns right away because I want us having a lead. Like we need to play with a lead against that type of team. Whereas maybe it's a conference team that we've beat historically. I go, hey, just get into rhythm, right? If that helps you and you want to go do line double ups the first 5 serves, because that's going to help you side out better, then go ahead. But typically for us, if we can side out those first couple sides well, we're in a lot of games against any team ranked in our area or below us.
Mhm.
Now, those top teams, that's where we'll tinker with strategy depending on matchup and or how we want to start a game, right? So I think to the players I'm speaking to that are listening, it's really about your game and what kind of how you want to play that team for that moment, right? Like if you want to, again, if you have the confidence in your abilities to side out, and then everybody scores points, right? Like nobody plays a perfect match. If you know that you can stay in it, then yeah, sit on some of those patterns a little bit. Don't show your hand, right? Knowing that, hey, they think they might be ahead of you, but no, 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 you know what's coming late and you know how you're going to neutralize that. Or if you're the type of player that has to get an early start, then use them early. But you better have the strengths and confidence to problem solve late because they're not going to just keep doing whatever you're stopping, right? I mean, nobody's just that's the definition of insanity, right? Hey, I'm just going to keep doing the same thing with negative result, right? No player at the competitive level would not make an adjustment of some sort. So I think the better you are at problem solving, probably the earlier you can show your hand because you know that they are going to problem solve right back, but you're staying ahead of them because you were expecting it. Whereas maybe a less experienced player or just a really good side out player is like, I'm good. I know it's going to come late and I'll get it late. Like, so we're, just a personal anecdote here. That's what I'm balancing with Troy and Chase is like, when do we, Chase is like, I want it done right away. Like we knew it was coming. Why did we not get it? And Troy's like, well, I'm seeing 10 of them and I know I can get 2 of them. And that could be the difference in a game is me picking and choosing. So we saw in Austin that worked for Troy, right? We saw it worked. He had a great tournament and he was digging some crazy balls, transitioning some balls. They made it to the finals. It didn't go their way. They faced a really, really good team that played out of their mind, or maybe that was just what that team played all tournament, really good. And then the next tournament they tried that and it didn't work, so it's just constant calibration at that level. But if you're like you said, B to AA, AAA range, I think you're watching a team, you're developing like, okay, this is kind of their tendencies. This is kind of their style of play. This is their go for it server. This is their, this blocker's 6'7". Like we got to move him, right? Like those are things that are pretty generic. I think is once you identify it, it will work, but it's your job to not abuse it, and it's your job not to wait too long to use it. Does that kind of make sense? So
Yeah.
that's why,
Well, to
again, I
me,
don't.
it's like that movie. I think it was Steve Prefontaine, where Steve Prefontaine, like, he was a distance runner, and he was like, I can run faster than every single person on this track at all times. So he wanted to go all out the
Mhm.
entire time. It sounds like that was Chase, and
Yeah.
then his coach was teaching him about pacing, about like saying like,
Yep.
no, like stay even and then burn them late, and you'll be a better runner. And they just completely butt heads on it,
Yeah.
and in the end, they found I don't think I watched the end, but either way, he won a gold medal, right?
Correct. Well, and that's the tough part is like balancing that, right? Like again, your players are the ones in it and experiencing it. So you have to kind of give some, you got to give way to them a little bit. Their lens is, although sometimes it can get emotional, typically they have a pretty good read for it at the professional level. So it's tough to balance that because, like you said, to me, 21-19, I'm going to remember that's a win, right? Or 15-13 in the third. But these players are like, no, 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 it's personal, man. I should be beating Mike Campbell 10 out of 10 in 2 sets. We are not playing the long haul. We are going to punch this guy in the face, and we are not going to let him punch back. We're going to put our foot on his neck. Sorry, a little graphic here, but
Yeah.
we are going to come in with that type of mindset because this is a statement. So the next 2 times we play them, they don't even have a shot. So I think it does need to, it oscillates, and I hate saying that because there's no definitive answer, but I think you just have to kind of weigh, yourself, your abilities, who you're playing, how you want to approach that game. And is it a team you should be sending that message to, or is it a team that maybe they're trying to do that to you and you need to play a little bit more of that longer drawn out strategy? I think it varies a little bit.
Could you give one example? So I think most players don't try to pay attention to what other players are doing or their tendencies or like what their shot is after they make an error or what their next swing is after they have a kill. Like, do they just repeat, repeat, repeat? Or do they randomly change it up after they've gotten 3 kills hard cross in a row and they just decide that they have to hit high line to change it up? So, can you give me a specific way to stop a specific shot? So let's choose either cut shot, cross, or high line. How would you design a defense to stop that?
Sure. So let's use the example of, and this is very common for our program, like we will go at spikers. Like we love making spikers, turning them into shooters, right? So I'm just using those categories of, of offensive types, right?
Perfect.
So for a spiker, traditionally, like you'll see a lot of combination athletes, outside hitters that are playing left side. They like kicking out, right? So we will serve deep, right shoulder, seam at a left side player, right? So we'll try to pinch them in,
Mhm.
take away that kick out approach so we can read their body line a little bit better, right? Because on the angle, as a right-handed player, you've got a lot of options, right? You can go body line cross, you can turn it, you can tool it, you can hip pivot. There's just so much range. So if we can eliminate that angle body line and turn it into more of like a stacked approach and make hitters hit thumb down where there's a little bit less control, there's a net that gets in the way, there's a block that could get you, that helps us because then we can kind of read the pattern of shot a little bit better, right? So that was a big thing for us, is finding a way to serve a spiker into the seam at the right time. Like, hey, let's serve short, let's serve deep, let's serve spin
Mm.
at her, let's let her kick out a couple times, let's run some ones, let's run some fours, let's pull, let's delay, like let's get her kind of getting her shots in and her swings in, and then 7-6, we're up, we're serving, let's steal a point right now. So we call it bait, right? Like let's bait them into this pattern. So let's chip like a witty high deep middle serve, back that spiker up. Hopefully they kind of get a little lazy with their approach, they come in, we run a 4, they pop the high line and a defender's on it, right?
Okay.
Because that would just be a theoretical. Does it work? Of course not every time, but it gives us something that our blocker will just do a great job funneling. Our defender will hold and trust the play, and if she hits a cut shot, great. If she spikes it, we're on it. Now obviously if it's tight set, our blocker isn't just going to dive, they're going to block ball, right? But typically on that play you're getting a cut or a high line. No spiker, I shouldn't say no, but a majority of spikers aren't going to just jumbo out of that play, right? They're not going to just hit a loopy angle, not at our
Yeah.
level. Not,
That's
and I
kind of a
don't even
like
think.
pro reserved one.
Correct, right?
It's
Like
where
you'll
they know
see.
you're trying to jam them into a short corner and it's yeah.
Correct. So if we can get a spiker who's not used to getting served a lot, then we serve them a lot, and they've kind of used their best shots. We can plan for this. We have the pattern, we have the trigger, which is that stacked approach that doesn't kick out. We run the play with confidence, and and more times than not, if you're using it at the right time, if you set it up the right way, you're going to get something you can stop, whether it be a block, like a bad low angle swing, or they maybe sometimes turn it and spike it out of bounds because they're just a little bit out of sorts, or they'll just pump that high line right to our player, which is what we were kind of setting up.
Is there something that you is that something that you put on repeat, repeat, repeat till it works, or do you
Yeah.
set it up with 2 serves in a different area so that then like now's our snap time. Okay, laid the trap, they got comfy, we let them get 2 cross kills, let's say.
Yeah.
Now we serve them middle, making them go for the same cross.
That's a good question. I think it's hard to categorize. I think at the higher levels, it's more about building the pattern. And like you said, like let's do a couple of these serves to get them uncomfortable. And then when they do this, maybe they hit this once, and then we do it again, and we keep it the same, knowing they're going to use their other option, right? Whereas if we keep changing it and she keeps changing it and she's always right and we're always wrong, we're never scoring points. It can get
Mm,
really frustrating. But the lower levels, what I do with them is it's all about failure recovery down there for me, because that's a much more emotional game sometimes, right? Where they're playing long rallies, there's momentum swings, there's just so much going on there that a little bit of tactics goes a long way, right? Because I kid you not, a majority of those games are going three and they're nail biters. They're going all the way, man. 21-19 in the third set. Like they're going way, overtime. Deuce games past the number 15, So I think in those games, we talk a lot about like, hey, this player just made a mistake. She's kind of reeling here a little bit. Let's set her up. Let's bait her into this swing. And if they side out, so be it. But if we're in a side out game like that, we have to be taking some risks, because that's the only way we're going to finish it off. They're not going to just hit in our lap. Like
mm,
that game is so much about movement, like shot movement usually, that we need to be ready for that, right? Like you're not typically going to win a game from your blocker at that level. You're gonna see a lot more dig, transition, kill to win a game, right?
yeah,
You don't
right.
see big servers at that level winning you games. Again, typically there's going to always be that anomaly,
Mhm.
right? But at the ones, twos, threes, you're getting big jump servers, you're getting big physical blockers going out of body, doubling up, a lot more like what we see on the AVP and World Tour, right? Where you got
I mean, the ones and twos are World Tour players
correct,
in the
right? You've
NCAA
got
right now.
Taylor Sanders step into the lineup one, and Taylor Crabb stands at the net to block. We all know what's going on there, right? The guy's just going to bomb a serve, right?
Mhm.
Like you're seeing that at the higher levels, where I think that is more about strengths. And then the lower five, I don't want to say lower levels. I think everybody's really good, but just in the traditional ranking scheme, 1 through 5, the 4, 5, 6s level, you're going to see a little bit more of, like you said, it's just the one off. Like, hey, try the play right here because we've done this, or we know that's her pattern. Like that is how she's going to score a point. That's why I call it failure recovery, right? Like when there's a big momentum swing, that next play we've got to have a plan for, because if it goes our way, we could win this game, right? And that's where it's like, that's the one off, is like, okay, hey, what was the error? What is she going to do to recover from that error? Is it going to be her cut? Is it going to be her swing? Is it going to be her shot? Now let's play for that, right? So then I let the team pick what that answer is, but at least we know we've kind of categorized what we're expecting. And it helps, right? It definitely helps give your players a little bit of clarity, and that way they're not overthinking the next point. The most important point, right, is if they don't get that setup, that bait play, now it's tie game, and they go back and they're pissed off.
Mm.
Whereas we just offloaded, hey, that was our call. That was our plan. Blame us. Don't blame each other or yourself and then risk losing the next play against their setup play, because they're trying to run the same stuff, right?
I love as a coach trying to take out the what if in players, where they're questioning and they don't know what they should go for. If
Yeah.
as a club coach or a high school coach, and then even as an AVP coach, when you can't give them the now's when we run this play, it's you have scenarios and you say, this is what we do after X,
Yeah.
and then at least they can have the confidence when they don't know what they want to do to be like, all right, well, our default is here.
Yeah.
And it's a good, it's nice to have trust in a play and in a system like that when you can. I know, even from my experience, from everybody else's experience, that when you're at 1919 or 2020, you're just kind of wondering what play to run, and there's not enough time before that whistle blows, and then you just
Yeah.
kind of like, I guess we'll do this,
Yep.
or you
Exactly.
just throw some fingers up behind you
Correct. And that's the
instead of
biggest.
yeah, a
Yeah.
plan.
Sorry to interrupt. That's the biggest thing, is just have a plan. And then you're taking out some of the speculation. And then usually the plan will match up with training, right? We don't want you to do something you haven't trained, because then or I'm sorry, maybe you've individually trained it, but your partner then turns around and is like, what? You just dug that ball? Like, what's going on? And then I'm not ready to set, or I like, double a ball because I was just like so in admiration of you, and I'm like, crap, I got to be better. And now I go back there and I get aced, right? Like there's just so much value to that. And that's what I've come a long way. Like I did not do a very good job of that in my first year on the AVP or my first year coaching collegiate. Is I can hold a lot of information in my brain. Just I enjoy film study. I enjoy strategy. Like I enjoy all that.
Mm.
But I realize my players aren't necessarily on the same page. And so I had to
Some
make
of
it,
them.
yeah, I had to make it more digestible for an 8 second, let's use FIVB, right? Like you get 8 to 10 seconds between plays on average. I had to get something to them that they could digest. Or at the collegiate level, you're getting anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds in timeouts or side switch. Out of that time, players probably need half of it to just get over whatever they're feeling. You know what I mean? Because they're either upset or they're way too excited,
Yeah.
right? Very rarely are you just, okay, I'm ready for all this
Yeah,
information.
making sure your partner's emotionally okay and
Yeah, you're
do the hand pat.
high-fiving. You
Yeah.
gotta worry about which side to switch to. You don't wanna bump into, do I high-five the other player? Do I avoid awkward? There's all these things that are coming into it, right? And so then I get about, 10 to 15 seconds with a player or 2. So I had to just give one nugget of information, right? Like, just keep it to one piece of information that would help for the next 7 points on the collegiate side or for the next 1 point on the AVP,
The
because
next
now
7 points is so brilliant. Oh, I wish more club coaches would hear that.
yeah, right?
Yeah,
It's
instead of the
just
one tip per point, and it's
correct.
it's retroactive. It's what
Yep,
just happened instead of what's
yep.
going to happen. It's
So
like this
that's
is
yeah,
just
that's where I fell short so many times, and I was like, okay, a lot of reflection, a lot of player exit interviews leading me to this conclusion. We have to just move on. And as a coach, there's nothing more frustrating than you watching your players break the plan or go rogue, is what we call it, right? Where they're just going and doing something completely outside the box of training. Even if it's good, I know that they're not mentally engaged the way we need to be to beat some of these teams, right? So on the side switch, you got to hold your tongue. You just got to go, hey, moving forward, we're trying this, right? And that was something I worked with Zana Muno for one like little mini season during that pandemic year. And she was like, Mike, you are confusing the crap out of me. Just tell me what to do. And I was like, you got it. And so that was nice to hear a player, and she was young, but it was nice to hear a
that's a
professional
mature
athlete.
thing to say, to
Correct.
come at
Just
coach and say, "You need to be clearer for me."
correct. And to have the confidence. And we had a previous relationship, so she felt really confident, but it was very eye-opening for me knowing that, man, I do that to my college players too, and they're probably just too afraid to say something. I'm giving them way too much. Not necessarily retroactive. A lot of it was proactive or, for future plays, but it was just information that they're like, what did he just say? I'm just going to do the same thing. And I'm
Mm.
like, no, so I think it was a really good thing to hear that early on. And then it just streamlines the impact as a coach that you can have, where, again, we want to control so much, but we can't. Collegiately, it's built in. You can't. 7 points, plan for 7, give them something they can use that will score them 1 or 2 points. You're not going to win all 7. It's just not going to happen. Like, no team will give you a 7-0 side without ultimate failure. And if that's happening, that team probably doesn't need a coach. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to
Yeah,
be okay,
I
right?
think
But
that rule would make so many indoor coaches better as
on the
coaches.
yeah, that they can't give feedback every point.
Yeah,
It's a cool
like, how do
thought.
I bunch the next 7 points of advice right now?
It's a cool thought.
Mm.
I mean, that I think would scare the heck out of a lot of coaches.
Yeah, it would.
That would be a heart attack for a lot of people. And there's been a lot because internationally the coach can't even be on the sand, right? Like I think they're
Mm.
trying to, the referees. There's a certain element of respect that they want to keep the referees and the players, and that's the group, right? And I get that, that's how they do it Olympically. It makes sense. But I think for the way the AVP has changed it, it's been I still don't, I'm not giving every point, but I'm calling some of those plays, at the right moments
Yeah.
right. Because I think that's important. Like you said, in the grander scheme of things, pennies on the dollar, right? I'm not making a drastic amount. So why do I need to feel the need to exert so much control, right? Collegiately, it's a little tougher because it is your livelihood. This is a big part of what you do. So it's nice to have, excuse me, that built-in framework where you cannot do too much and overwhelm, but you can do enough to where you can impact a game and you can be held responsible as a coach for not, getting your team where they need to be, right?
Right.
It is, you can't make an excuse. Oh, well, I couldn't say anything. Now you're getting enough now. So I think that the changes we've seen are helpful. And I know every ref probably gives me the warning. I think every coach that is competitive gets a warning in a match. Hey, not cheering anymore. Let's scale it back.
Mhm.
So, but I think you do it respectfully. You can, like I said, it can be a little gray, right? There's still some gamesmanship there, though.
Yeah. Mike, I can't thank you enough for this talk. This we touched in areas that I didn't expect to, and we went deeper in some of the areas that I was really happy to pick your brain about. And there's a bunch of questions left, but I have to work with my online players in about 15 minutes. So I wish we had more time because I want to dive into AVP coaching and like
Yeah.
what the talks are about. So maybe we can get you on again and tackle some other topics.
Yeah.
But
We'll have to change the rating of the podcast to rated R because those talks can get a little colorful. Let's just
that would be
preface it with
fantastic.
that.
A members only
Yeah,
episode.
exactly. Yeah. No, it's the way I have this little time ticker in the top left of my screen here. This flew by. So I think the conversation was awesome, and I hope everybody enjoys the subject and what we got into. And I'd love to chat more. And again, just very appreciative that you guys thought of me and invited me. And I feel like a very small, tiny little star in the solar system of beach volleyball, but I'm happy to always share because it was just growing up. I didn't even get to tell you my story growing up. It was such a big part of my childhood. So I want to share that and inspire others. And I think the game, the legends before us have set that precedent. We owe it to them to continue and to also enhance and to make it better for future generations. And so I would love to share more anytime.
That'd be great, and we'll definitely bribe you into doing that. Are there any projects that you're working on going forward, or anywhere or way that you want people to reach out to you or look for anything that you're doing? Any good ways to get in
Well,
touch?
no, just we'd love the support of our program here at Long Beach. I think our team, we've really got a special group. It's something I'm very, very proud of is the culture, and every single player we've instilled and enhanced the already profound core values they've got. And so I would love the youth and or even the competitive group to just have a moment if you ever do, just to check us out. I think it's really special. I think like I said, some of the passion and the specialness of this sport shines through our players. And so it's just a breath of fresh air. Even in a competitive environment, you can still smile. You can still play with joy. You can still play with fire, but reset to a place of joy. Right? There's just a lot of cool things happening around the program. So I would love for anyone on the spectrum to come check us out in the beach volleyball world. Projects, I'm too busy for any projects. I wish I had some time with the family, club coaching, the AVP coaching, the college coaching. There's a lot. So, but I'm putting my all into it. So I'm really proud of those things. So yeah, please come on out, check us out.
Cool, and give you a high five at the AVP tournaments when they're
Of course.
seeing you on center court.
Yeah, of course, man. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it, man.
Nice, Mike. Thank you. Appreciate the talk. Have a great day. I know you're a busy man, but really appreciate your time.
You bet. Take care.
All right, have a good one. How cool was that
That was great.
for an episode? So, Mike, I mean, it's so intriguing to always to find a coach who is doing it at the NCAA level, is doing it at the pro level, knows everything there is to know. And we didn't dive into it, but I'm sure that he's coached juniors. Um, to know what it's like to play and compete and work with different athletes all along those uh, different mindsets, and to pull experience from that. It's fun to see that he takes his NCAA coaching and then with passion, he goes and he coaches AVP. Of course, we don't know like behind the scenes what deals AVP players strikes up with coaches, and I'll tell you from my experience, it's always different. It could be an
Yeah.
hourly rate, it could be a daily rate, it could be work cover your hotels. You take 10% of winnings. You just kind of make it up, and
Yeah.
hopefully
There's
people.
no infrastructure there.
Yeah. um, but it's it's awesome to see that he's going out with passion and continuing to coach. So if you guys, here's an idea: look up Long Beach State uh, University, Long Beach State University, their beach volleyball website. It is on the show notes. Check out their schedule. Go to a match. Take some friends. See what it's like to see an actual duel where you see 5 teams and sometimes 2 or 3 different schools competing at the same time. It would be awesome. Their schedule will be there. We're linking it. We also got Mike's Instagram down here so you can follow along with all his endeavors and what pro players and NCAA players he is coaching. And that is it. I'm happy with this episode. If you guys ever want to reach out, or you know that we have, if you don't know, we have practice plans ready for you. We are running coaching clinics, and we're starting a Better at Beach coaching certification. So if you are a coach and you either want to get better or you want to join the Better at Beach team and start changing some lives and being able to do it remotely from anywhere in the world, we would love to have you on the team. Just shoot me a message. Be stoked to have you there. And reach out if you guys ever have any questions or you need help. That's why we built the company and why we get to run such cool interviews like we just did. So that's all from me, guys. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Go ahead and visit Long Beach State University. Go check out Mike on Instagram. And if you need any coaching advice or player advice or anything, you know to head to betteratbeach.com. We'll be there for you. All right. See you on the sand.